Welcome to Term 5. Are you ready for this next chapter of your life? Stay tuned to find out. Well, hello there, my little YouTube family, and welcome back into my journey into becoming Dr. Nanette Varela. My name is Nanette, and thank you for coming. So, the moment you've been waiting for, this is your Term 5 recap. If you have gotten up to this point, I congratulate you because you have almost finished basic sciences, and there is still a lot more that you have to go, but take it slow. There's a lot of thoughts coming now going into this new term, and trust me, we've all gone through it. I know you must be thinking about STEP and everything, but don't forget you are still a basic science student, so your main priority is to pass Term 5. So without that nitty gritty, let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video. Let me know down in the comments if all of these tips are helpful or anything you guys would like to know that you want me to share. Let me know and I will make a little plan to let you guys know all those little tips. But let's get started. I don't want this to be too big of a video. It's just a lot of information is coming at you and most of you do not know. So these are my tips that help me throughout Term 5 and prepare for dedicated and past Step 1. So this is going to be your full Term 5 recap. So let's get started. So basically Term 5 is going to be a mix of Term 4, continuation of Term 4, and basically when Term 5 starts, which is what I call it, because I think it's mostly like a two-part thing. So you guys know I have all my little notes on my iPad here, and I'm gonna share with you guys. So basically you're gonna have 4 modules, okay? You have M&I, you have CPRH, Gower, and then DNPR. So these 4 modules, you're going to have 4 module exams. You're going to have 3 OSCE exams, which I will talk about those. And you have your BSF CR. So in this module, in this term as well, you start your hospital visits, which honestly are my favorite ones. So let's start off with how the term usually starts with. So basically you start with M&I. M&I is muscle, nervous, and integumentary system, which is basically the skin. So M&I is going to be about 5 weeks, and it's a big chunky module, and my recommendation is to learn M&I really good. M&I is basically a continuation of Term 4, so whatever strategies that you did during Term 4, continue that in M&I module, because M&I is new material, it's new content, pathology, pharm, microbiome, all of the same little goodies that you love from Term 4, they're getting moved into Term 5 in M&I. So my recommendation for M&I, make sure you do really well in M&I. Make sure you know the content, because M&I content is gonna come back on the last module for DNPR. And it's important for you to master it like that. Once you see it again at the end of the term, you're gonna be a little bit better at it, or you're just gonna catch on to the things you didn't know. So my recommendation is to start really good with DNPR, because as the term progresses, things get a little bit more complicated and it gets rough. So after M&I, this is when I say basically Term 5 starts. So with M&I, you're gonna have one of those OSCE exams out of the 3. This is an individual OSCE, is gonna have to do with the physical exams of M&I. So M&I is MSK and neuro, and I believe psych as well. So that's going to be 1 module exam and 1 OSCE exam, and that OSCE is going to be individual, which means it's going to be like all your previous OSCE exams, which is just you by yourself with your patient encounters. So basically that's how M&I works. Moving on to when Term 5 actually begins, is what I call it, is with CPRH. So starting with CPRH. At this moment that you are starting that shift, which SGU calls the 3rd spiral, meaning all the content that you've seen, that you're gonna see in the upcoming next 3 modules, you have already seen it throughout basic sciences since term 1. So basically you're gonna go back to term 1 and you're gonna see everything. You're gonna see the main anatomy, you're gonna see the main functions, then you're gonna see the pathophysiologies, and then you're gonna see the clinical integration of it in term 5. So my recommendation at this point, something that I did not do, I did it in Gower. I started it in Gower. So my recommendation right now is for you to start doing UWorld. So UWorld has a lot of questions, and the way that UWorld asks questions is very different to the way that SGU asks questions. So you need to start incorporate a little by little of how to use UWorld questions. So CPRH is basically cardiopulmonary, renal, and heme. So in that first week, it's basically 4 weeks. So in that first week, you're going to be covering cardio. The second week is pulmonary, then renal, then heme. So within that week, I would recommend for you to basically at least do a couple questions that have to do with the cardio system, either normal pathologies or normal functions, and then the pathology behind it. Whatever you want to see, start playing around with UWorld, get familiarized with it because it's super important. Another tool that you're going to get given is going to be RX. So SGU gives you the subscription for RX and for UWorld, so you don't need to pay for that. So my recommendation is just wait for them to give it to you, and it's going to be given to you right after M&I, between the couple of days between M&I and CPRH. You're going to be getting all the instructions for your UWorld subscription and RX. Now SGU has weekly quizzes on RX. RX is basically a way for you to either see if you know the content or you don't. Their questions are very straightforward, 1-sentence questions. What is the function of this? Or where did this come from? Or what is the picture showing? Which is a pathology? What's the diagnosis? Very simple questions. It's either you know it or you don't. They have explanations behind it. Use it as a tool to know your content, to see if you know your content. Then use another form of questions like UWorld or even OMBOS if you have it, to see if you know the content for real and if you're applying the knowledge, because RX is basically a way of you to know the content. And if you go through the RX questions, all of it for, like, let's say a specific topic, that's going to be the same questions from your quizzes. So just make sure that you do your quizzes at the end of everything, because those are part of your professionalism grade. So don't forget to do your RX quizzes for every week. For CPRH, they do accumulate at the end, so I recommend for you to do them after every week that you have that big topic, cardio, pulmonary, renal, heme. Make sure at the end of that week you do the RX the quiz, and have completed all the RX questions. And if you want to go a step further, do the UWorld for the cardio. Cardio is a very big chunk, so I just don't get overwhelmed by it. Just start playing with it. Learn how to ask questions. Don't get overwhelmed if you start getting 20s on UWorld, because it is okay. It is very hard. So my recommendation, that's the way that I would want you to go into this, okay? Another tip that I really want you to keep in mind is, and don't forget this, is a lot of people don't like lectures during term 5 because after M&I, because the content you've seen 100 million times, you've seen it. You're gonna see all the same content from term 4 in regards to pathologies. You're gonna see everything all over again, and I get it. It's tedious. You feel like you don't want to go to class. It's the reality of it. It's part of your attendance, etc. We're not going to go into that. But I do recommend for you to keep in mind that you are getting tested on SGU content. A lot of people forget about that. They only focus on studying for STEP. You need to focus on the fact that you're getting an exam from SGU. And please take a look at those PowerPoints that they give you during CPRH, Gower, and DNPR, because they do like to add small little details that you've never known before, and they like to test on that. So please make sure to take a look at your PDFs that you're given during term 5. It's okay to go back to term 1 content. It's 100%. You need to go back to all of it to review it like that. Once you start dedicated, you've already reviewed it. But my recommendation, make sure you look at those PowerPoints, because the questions are probably going to come from there. They're going to come from deep down term 1, but they will come out all the way from term 5 content in those PDFs that you get given. So my recommendation for you to succeed in this, real quick, top 4 tips. Number 1, find your review goddess. So for me, for example, I have my notes. I've been doing my notes since term 1, and I've had my holy grail is in this iPad. So everything I needed to know and go back to since term 1, I had it here, anything to review. I personally did not use the step 1 review book like a lot of people do. I hated that book, honestly. Every time I looked for something, it wasn't there, or the content is just very over the top review. And for me, I want to go into in depth, so I went into my notes. Not everyone's like this. Whatever you have, whatever you use, is super important. Another review form that I used was my notes and Med School Bootcamp. Med School Bootcamp has a lot of really good videos, and they even have questions. So my recommendation is, if you want to use Med School Bootcamp, you can use Med School Bootcamp. I have a code. The code is 9010. If you want to be able to get a subscription on it and get a little discount, you could use my code. I used it. I love it. I'm still going to use it throughout Dedicated because it goes back deep. I used it throughout Dedicated, and even now when I'm starting clinicals to prepare for it, I'm going to be using it and watching those videos. So it's super important for you to find your main way to use it as a review tool or content learning strategy, or whatever you want to call it. A lot of people use Ambos. Ambos is really good. I've never used it, but I know a lot of people use it and it's really good. I want to get a subscription for now for clinicals, but if you already have it, go ahead. Number 2, start doing practice questions early. Do your RX questions early. Get on the RX website. Start going through topics and do all the questions that have to do with that topic. Just don't focus on the quizzes. Do all the topic questions and start getting familiarized with UWorld. And number 3, make sure to look at the PowerPoints that SGU gives you during term 5. And then just start going over content review. For term 5, practice questions, go over everything for every topic. Make sure you know pathophysiology, microbiome, pathology, and pharmacology. Basically you need to know everything because you don't know what's coming at you. But that's basically like my top tips for you to succeed for these next 3 modules that's coming up. Another thing that starts in this chunk is your hospital visits. So these are the most exciting part. My recommendation for hospital visits, you're gonna get assigned, it's gonna be your Beeline group. You're gonna have a group leader, and that group leader basically is gonna either assign or agree within you guys what are gonna be your roles for that hospital visit. You're gonna get to go to a lot of nice experiences and hope you guys to see a lot of nice encounters. Just make sure you know your physical exams and how to take a history. Basically, that's how much you really need to know. Take it as a learning experience. Be prepared if you want to show a good impression, and just put yourself out there. You can also talk to the doctors and ask them any questions you want. It's basically a fun time for you to just start getting incorporated a little bit of that actual patient physician encounter that we don't actually see in person in our Beelines, but you will see them once you start hospital visits. Another thing that also starts during this little chunk is your BSFCR small groups. So I think this is the first time I mentioned about BSFCR. So you know that BSFCR is going to be basically another BSc. If you remember at the end of term 2 that you had a BSCE, which is a commutative, well, you're going to have another commutative at the end of term 5 that you do need to pass in order to be moved on to clinicals, dedicated, period. So now after your M&I module, you start doing BSFCR small groups. For BSFCR small groups, there's no way really you could prepare for them other than the topic or the main complaint that they give you. So they're just going to give you a PDF that says patient presents with chest pain. Then basically you do what you do in Beeline, where you create differentials, what type of questions you want to ask, etc. It's going to be like a casework. You're going to work it out with your group. It's just ways for you to start hitting those contexts all the way, incorporating term 1 to term 5. So BSFCR small groups, make sure you go to them. You can only miss a couple of them, and if you miss them, you get penalized by it, and you're only gonna have your BSFCR grade, a midterm, and the final. So I'll talk about it once you get to that point, but let's go into the nitty-gritty. So once you start with CPRH, so cardiopulmonary, renal, and heme, this first module is going to be hard because not a lot of people know what to expect from these exams. It gets very tricky because there's a lot of content, especially with cardio and renal getting integrated so much. It's very hard for you to decipher what is going to get tested. So if you get very overwhelmed, just, take a step back, see what you're doing, and analyze everything. CPRH, you're going to know it. You have to know everything that has to do all the way from term 1, anatomy, imaging, you name it, everything can pop up on your test. CPR, cardiopulmonary, renal, and hematology. Hematology, you saw it in term 4. Renal, you saw it in term 4. Pathology. Pulmonary, you saw it in term 5. Pathology, in term 4. Pathology. So you've seen the path. So hopefully, if you've done well throughout this process, you will be reminding yourself about the whole pathologies and pharm. It's just, if you need to go back to term 1 and term 2 content, make sure that you do so. Around this time, you will go into Gower. So Gower is GI, obstetrics, endocrine, and reproductive, I believe. So again, it's gonna be 4 weeks. You're gonna have, in this process, between that, go back, the same tips I said at the beginning, use them, incorporate them the same way. In Gower, that's when I started to work with UWorld, and it helped me a lot because the way that I saw the difference between CPRH and Gower in grade-wise, because in CPRH, for example, raw score, it was one of my lowest exams. Don't get overwhelmed by that. Like, it doesn't just define who you are or how you study, but it's just the way that that exam is filled. It's one of the lowest averages. It's okay. You just need to make sure you know your content and you take time to practice your questions timed. Okay, one of the things I saw is that I ran out of time during that CPRH exam. So my recommendation is try to do your questions on a timely manner. Do it under a timed timer, so you know that you're answering questions with that time frame and you get to finish your questions. So moving on back to Gower, it's 4 weeks. You're gonna have in this process your module exam as well, and I think between CPRH and Gower, in this time frame, you're gonna have your group OSCE. So your group OSCE is basically gonna be like a regular OSCE, but because you're in Beeline, you're gonna be doing your OSCE with your whole group. So someone's gonna be assigned a history taker, someone's gonna be assigned your physical exam, and someone's gonna be assigned to do the closure. So this is a group grade, so everyone needs to make sure they're on the same page. The differentials and all of that in your SOAP note is individual, because you do stop to do your SOAP note as a usual individual person, but the actual encounter is graded as a group. So that is 2 out of the 3 OSCEs. And then during this time as well, you have your midterm BSFCR. So your midterm BSFCR is going to be 50 questions, is like an hour and something. My recommendation is BSFCR, your small groups have quizzes. They give you, it's basically a separate course on your Sakai where they're going to give you some quizzes. I did all those quizzes before the midterm. Now, the same questions are not going to pop on the midterm, but my recommendation is for every question that you do, try to break down every multiple choice answer and cover all the context that you want to go over. There is no way that you're going to be able to prepare for BSFCR midterm or final because it is too much material. Don't forget, this is a SGU exam. This is an SGU exam, so don't forget that, okay? So make sure you go through, if you want to go back through previous IMCQs, etc. When I did it, we had the weekend. We had the test on a Monday and we had the weekend. So within that weekend, I kept studying for Gower. I think we were in Gower. Or between CPRH and Gower, it was between the term during Gower that you have one of those weekends that you will only study for the BFCR midterm. So what I did, basically, I studied for Gower, and then Saturday and Sunday I studied for the BFCR midterm. So don't get it super overwhelmed by it, but make sure you do well, because your final exam is going to be the points are going to be more higher than your midterm, but make sure you still do good, okay? Moving on to that, then we go to DNPR. DNPR has dermatology, neuro, psych, and I forgot what the last R is for. Rheumatology. So it's for rheumatology. So again, it's basically M&I adding the psych from term 2. So make sure that you go over that. It's super important. And during this time, you also will be having your last OSCE, which is an individual OSCE as well. You also have a case report that you have to be getting ready to plan at the end of the term, which basically is going to be one of your patient encounters that you had at the hospital that you want to present to the preceptor, basically your facilitator during a Beeline group. It's 15 minutes that you do a little presentation, nothing big, nothing for you to be overwhelmed with. You just basically talk about the history, the physical exam, the possible complications, medications, basically a cute little PowerPoint that just shows a nice encounter that you had, or a very interesting encounter that you had that you want to share. You could do that. Throughout also this process, in regards to the hospitals, you will have 2 patient care assignments. The patient care assignments, they're going to be due throughout your hospital visits, and then that has to do with one of the encounters that you choose, again, from your hospital visits. You basically do a full SOAP note that has to do, SOAP, history, physical exam, differentials, plan, etc. And then you're going to write like a little reflective essay, and then you're going to do a little like mini paragraph or essay in regards to like a research behind, or a question that you had that there's some research behind it. Then you will be able to fill that out. But everyone gets overwhelmed by it. You could really do it in 2 hours. Like, it's no big deal. Whatever SOAP note, you're basically going to be taking notes throughout your hospital encounters. Make sure you take a little notebook, and you make sure you have all the information for the one that you have the most information for. Go ahead and use it for your SOAP note. Try to get as many encounters as you have. If you don't, make sure, if you want to use it, you could always tell your preceptor, hey, I want to use this patient for my patient encounter, my patient assignment, so please let me get all the information that I need to get for them, and they know. So just don't be shy to talk or ask questions. It's always okay. They know you're a student. They're not expecting for you to be a genius. And then after DNPR, you will have, I think I already mentioned, your last OSCE, and then your DNPR final. Not final, but your module exam for DNPR. So again, it's like M&I. You're going to see M&I content all over again. So it's a win-win if you already did really good for M&I when you get DNPRH. The DNPR, you're already going to be able to do a little bit better at that point. Then you finish with that, and you get your whole week. I think we had like a week for BFCR. Hit the books as good as you want. Some people don't study for it, some do. For me, I just basically started studying for basically dedicated. I just did UWorld questions, random UWorld questions. I went back at least like 2 or 3 days before. I went back to like SGU content, because again, it's an SGU exam, not a step exam. So I went back to my notes. I reviewed the main points that I wanted to go through. I went through term 1, and I started going through like what I remember was high yield, lysosomal storage diseases, glycogen pathways, glycogen storage diseases, anything that I was like, oh, I gotta go back and review that. I went and reviewed it. Okay, so try to do your best. There's no way that you can prepare for it. If you're a person that likes to go through IMCQ questions, previous PowerPoints, do it. By all means, focus on yourself. This is a time for you to focus on yourself. Once this little week passes by, you do BSFCR, and then you won't get your grade for BSFCR or DNPRH or for your OSCE until the end of everything. So it's a little like overwhelming because you don't even know where you're standing, but you will do okay. Trust me, okay? Just don't forget about the tips that I gave you, because it's super important for you to start, you know, changing the way that you study a little bit, because your end goal is to pass term 5 and to pass STEP eventually once you go into dedicated. So my recommendation, don't forget about your tips. Find that one main source or 2 main sources that you're going to use for your content review. Use questions, RX, UWorld, or AMBO. Stick to something short. Don't get overwhelmed by too much resources. And don't forget that term 5 is an SGU exam, so please look at the PowerPoints that they give you during term 5. It's very important. Okay, so I think I gave you guys a big chunk of content. One of the things I am going to talk about real quick that I forgot is, once M&I finishes, you're going to start getting some talks about clinical placement and what to expect for dedicated and the statistics behind it, and yes, it's a lot. So I recommend for you to take it slowly, day by day. Those talks can be very stuffed up with information. They will give you a little calendar of timelines, of dates that need to be met. Make sure you have it close to you. Make sure you have it handy so you take a look at it. Usually that first talk after M&I is gonna be about clinical placement, and which is what everyone wants to know, when to choose your state. So you will have a deadline. They will tell you. They will post the PDF of hospital lists that are affiliated, and what you get to do is that you get to choose only 3 states we're talking about. We're not talking about hospitals. We're talking about states where you get to choose. So you're going to choose the one that you want the most to the one that you want the least. So make sure you decide very well what you want, okay? And because they usually don't like to do any exceptions after that, you have a little time frame when the application is open for you to put in the states that you want, and for every state you could put a little explanation of why you want to be placed there. So by all means, go all out. If you want a place that you want it 100%, go all out. Say everything that you wanted to say. For me, for example, I chose Florida, Michigan, and California. Those were the 3 places I wanted. So when I wrote Florida, I live in Miami, have family in Miami, so I went all out. I live there. I have my apartment there with my boyfriend. I have everything. So whatever you want to write there, pour your heart out, because they do read them. So make sure that you think about the process. If you know you want to be in a place for a certain reason, tell them why, okay? One of the things that I did see was that because SGU is based in New York, any person that put New York will probably get New York. So New York and New Jersey are your 100% places that you know you will get placed 100%. Everything else varies because it gets, you know, most people, like residential people, like to stay there. Like people who have their own address and they live there will start getting those places first, etc. So keep that in mind, but make sure you chose your right choices and take it with a grain of salt. Don't get too overwhelmed by it. Make sure, if you do have questions, to always email SGU Clinical Placements email. They will tell you about that. They will have a talk about financial aid. They will have a talk about STEP and all the statistics behind it. So take it with a grain of salt. Slow, little by little. They want you to start thinking a lot about STEP. So for those of you that are probably starting in term 5 that will be finishing in December, you have a much more longer dedicated time. For those that finish in May, like me, where I only had 6 weeks, so you do have to plan yourself accordingly to whatever time frame you finish your term 5 schedule and things like that. So with that being said, I think I am finishing this little video for you. If you guys have any questions, I think I spoke about everything that has to do with term 5. This is a big term, okay? Take it little by little. If you feel like you're not doing great, always reach out. Make sure, because if you don't want to be finishing the term and not doing well, because your main goal eventually is to pass step, so make sure, if you did not do as well as in term 4 as you wanted, make sure you come back during term 5 with redemption. Hard work pays off at the end. Trust me when I say this. So if you guys have any questions, please reach out to me. You guys know that I am here to help you guys whenever you want. And if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to let me know in the comments. I hope these tips are helpful. This video might have been a little bit long, but there is a lot to talk about because this is a very big term, and I know a lot of you had a lot of questions that I must have answered throughout this video. If you have any other questions, let me know. I am here for you. If you love this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.